thank you all for being here for this workshop organized by For You Plus in the mainstream of the One Core projects. The title of this workshop is Open Access and Beyond, the Practical Toolkit and Emerging Publishing and Review Models. Thank you again for being all here. And please we ask you to close your mics. And at the end, there will be the QA session, or the workshop will be recorded, except for the Q&A session. Thank you again for the speakers and for people organizing this workshop.
Okay, perfectly. So I will start also with another warm welcome to everybody who is connected here today. I will repeat again to please keep your microphones closed, and if you have questions, to use the chat and the Q&A section. Today we are going to discuss a topic that is very important and recent, and also connected to the broader activities of the For You Plus Alliance. In fact, today's webinar will discuss how open access works, and it will help you to navigate the complex world of academic publishing by illustrating the major features of the open access world, explaining to you, especially through a very useful toolkit that has been designed on purpose, what the different OA, open access practices and colors, what they mean and how they can be beneficial or not for different kinds of purposes. Of course, today's webinar is strongly connected to open science practices more broadly, because open access is one of the many features of open science. And of course, learning about open access can, of course, also help us to learn more about the principles and the practices of open science. Because you will be able to also have your own critical understanding of the major advantages and disadvantages of the academic and scientific environment in terms of publications. Before we begin with the webinar itself, let me also briefly mention that One Core stands for One Comprehensive Research Intensive European University, and that this four-year project was initiated by a European Commission call, which the project has then followed up upon. So you will find references to this One Core project and also references to the For You Plus team, which has produced the toolkit and which will be easily accessible for you. In the toolkit, you will also find useful contacts, and my colleagues will explain in more detail how the toolkit can be useful for you. Last but not least, of course, let me introduce very briefly all of today's speakers, just so that you have also a broader idea of who is part of the For You Plus Alliance and who is talking today. First of all, we have Paola Galimberti, who works at the University of Milan, where she coordinates the activities to support open science practices and policies and their concrete implementation within the university. She is an open science expert, and she has played in time a central role in Italy, but also in the international arena in developing open science strategies and developing open science networks. And in fact, she is an active member of many different networks that work for the promotion and practical implementation implementation of open science. I will name some amongst the many groups which she collaborates with, and these are the Opera Network, the For You Plus Alliance, the ISA Association in Italy. She has helped to draft and draw out the Barcelona Declaration, and she is constantly committed to the development of sensibilization around these topics and an active work towards them. Then we have Mathilde Delaunay, who is an open science training officer at the Archives, Libraries and Museum Collections Department of Sorbonne University in Paris. She has a PhD in ecology, and her work focuses on promoting open science and citizen science amongst doctoral candidates, researchers, and university staff. Since 2025, she has been involved in For You Plus activities and initiatives, and she coordinates the Open For You Plus training program on open science. Then we have Carolina Manfredini, who is a data steward at the University of Milan since 2023. She holds a PhD in historical and archaeological sciences, and she combines her historical research with a strong commitment to open science and research data management. She is involved in the daily operation of Dataverse Unimi, which is the university's research data repository, and she supports researchers on a daily basis to develop also data management plans, FAIR principles, and the upload of their work. She is also part of different networks, such as the For You Plus Alliance today. Carolina Minch has been working at the University of Warsaw Library since 2004 and is currently a member of the Science Support Department. She is involved in the management of the University of Warsaw Institutional Repository, and she is actively engaged in promoting open access to publications and research data. Therefore, she is monitoring the implementation of open science policies across and supporting transparent and accessible research practices. Since 2020, she is involved in open science activities with For You Plus Alliance. And in 2025, she was also appointed as the rector's proxy for open science at the University of Warsaw. Then finally, myself, I am also a data steward at the University of Milan, and I have a PhD in international studies. I am very much involved in the daily operations of open science practices and principles here at the University of Milan, and my research interests are broadly connected to the study and further learning about research evaluation and research governance. Now, without further ado, I will leave you all to the incredible webinar that we have organized in a collective manner and with lots of hard work, and we hope that you will enjoy it, and we'll have lots of questions at the end for us to respond to. Enjoy.
Thank you so much for this introduction. Like you can see on the presentation, we have this 3 parts in the content, and I will introduce you the first one. So getting started with open access, a toolkit and the open access pathway. I would like to introduce the basics of open access, explain why it has become such an important part of the scholarly communication, and present the practical guidance which are available through the For You Plus Open Access Toolkit. So let's begin with a simple question. What is open access? This term means that we make research outputs freely available online so that anyone can read, download, use those outputs freely without subscriptions barriers. The underlying idea is very simple. Research, especially publicly funded research, should be accessibly not only to researchers working at very well-funded university, but also to students, professionals, policymakers, and industry or society as a whole. Next big question can be why this is matter. Well, open access increase the visibility of research, support collaboration, it advance scientific progress and help ensure that knowledge is available to everyone who can benefit from it. Why is important for your young researchers? First of all, it increases visibility and citation of your work. It's speed up the scientific communication. It as well support the collaboration and transparency. Nowadays, it as well meets funders and institutional requirements, which they develop specific policies that also helps build your academic profile in your early career, and you get credit for more of your contributions. Well, however, open access during this past 20 years developed very much. It's not the one publishing model. There are several different pathways that researchers can choose depending on their discipline, publisher, founder requirements, and available institutional support. And today, this choice is very important because many research funders require that the results of publicly funded research have to be made openly available. This is very connected with the initiative called PLANES, which was launched in more or less in 2020. This is the international consortium of research funding organization, and it promotes immediate open access to research publication and data sets and so on. As a result, when choosing where and how to publish openly, researchers increasingly need to consider not only the journal itself, but as well whether to choose open access pathway, which will comply the specific founder requirements. And you can see on this picture that we can think about publishing as a journey from traditional subscription publishing, which we normally in short call paywall, towards increasing open dissemination. And at the one side, we have closed access. This is the traditional subscription model where readers or the institution must pay to get access to read the publication. So like you can see, this path doesn't reach the final line, but moving forward towards graded openness, we came across green, gold, hybrid, and diamond open access. There are now single best open access model, which will, of course, suits everyone. But fortunately, researchers don't have to navigate those choices alone. And that brings me to another slide. We, as a European Union Alliance, develop in the One Core project Toolkit, which is very helpful for researchers and staff at our university, but as well broader to different academic institutions. So in my work, basically researchers frequently ask me questions such as, do I need to pay publication fees, or does this publishing route is complying with my founder's requirements? Well, to answer those questions, we developed this open access user guide. Now is available on Zenodo. On the slides, you can see the link in the right bottom corner. This guide is designed as a practical resource that support researchers throughout the publishing process. And for journal articles, the toolkit explains 5 main publishing pathways. It starts from preprints, then explains diamond, gold, green, and hybrid / gold as well transformative open access. In this text, we are describing how each model works, its advantages, typical publication workflows, and the founding mechanisms. In the toolkit, we also cover books, which remain especially important in the humanities and social sciences. For books, this toolkit presents the diamond, gold, and green open access models, and it explains what's the difference between publishing the book and publishing the journal in open access. The objective of Toolkit is not to recommend one specific, the best route, but rather to help researchers to make consider publish decision. Toolkit provides a common layout with appropriate boxes, which you can see now on these two slides. First, I chose the journal, which is will be published in diamond route. Each of this layout has a short, structured description of each pathway, together with the main advantages and disadvantages, which means benefits or limitation for each of these models. It's helping researchers quickly understand the implication of when they will choose one of these routes. And as well, it describes what kind of support each of the university have for the staff and researchers, for example, open science teams, and what practical action the author can take when choosing or supporting specific publishing route. So next slides, you can see the example for books as well, if they will be published in the diamond route. And now I would like to show you the table, which will compare each of the pathway. The table shows the several important criteria to compare those pathways. Those include the publication workflows, peer review status, publication cost, available manuscript version, copyright arrangements, self-archiving options, embargo periods, reader access, and when publication become openly available. So we start with preprints, which allows researchers to share the findings. So first version of text, most of the time before peer review. This support rapid dissemination and early scientific discussion. It's very popular in natural, for example, in natural sciences. About different types of version of text, there will be more details in the second part of this presentation, so I will just give you a brief explanation. Second, we have diamond open access. This model is very attractive because neither authors or readers pay publications fees. Instead, journals and which are supported by universities, scholar societies, or public funding, make research really accessible without financial barriers. This pathway is often considered the most sustainable because both financial resources like a budget, money, and copyright are remain within the academic institutions rather than being transferred to commercial entities. And I would like to show that it's as well resignable to the books. Another one, we have green open access, which means that researchers publish in traditional journal, but also deposit version of their manuscript in an institutional or disciplinary repository. Depending of the publisher policy, there may be some embargo period before the manuscript become publicly available. Next is the gold open access, where the final published article or book is immediately accessible, most of the time on publisher website. And this route as well involves the article or book processing charters, APCs or PPCs, which the author or institution has to pay to make this openly available through the publisher. Last but not least, we have the hybrid open access / transformative. Hybrid journals are subscription journals that allow individual articles to become open access. Of course, if the author or institution pays APCs or PPCs. Today, many universities participate in the transformative agreement, and they covering the cost of publishing. Those agreements are called transformative because their purpose was to transform the traditional subscription-based publishing models to support only open access. In short, they are negotiated between universities and publishers, and they combining subscription access with the publishing as well. We shortly call it read and publish agreements. And as a result, when we sign up these agreements, authors can often publish open access without paying APC themselves, while the institution can gradually each year shift their spending in the budget from paying to read the research to pay basically to make this research openly available. Side note that many concern this model as problematic because we have something called double dipping. This happening when institutions pay twice for the same content. In theory, if more articles become open access, subscription costs should decrease. However, in practical, this reduction is often not clearly visible. That's why sometimes this model gets some criticized from the society. On the bottom, you have the Open Policy Finder Toolkit. I recommended this one. This online tool allow researchers to verify publishers' policies regarding self-archiving, so the green open access pathway. It's telling you the embargo periods, copyrights, and permitted version of manuscript, which you can submit to the repositories before publishing it in the journal. This is the excellent tool to avoid uncertainty and when you are unsure which the pathway is compliant with your institutional policy or funder requirements. So in this diagram on the right, look, you can see the 4 important characteristic. First is the whether the publication is free for authors. The second is where publication where or will be under the peer review. Third, whether they are free for readers. And finally, whether the authors retain copyright. This combination shows how each of the open access pathway combines those characteristically differently. So for example, preprints are free to publish and free accessibly, but they have no yet undergo peer review. Diamond Open Access performs very well when we speak about access. It's free for both authors and readers. Articles are peer review, and authors as well usually retain copyright. You can see how the gold open access and green open access as well combine and difference from those first of all mentioned. And if you would like to further support after today's webinar, according to those pathways, you always can contact our university special units, and the email addresses are listed on these slides and as well in the toolkit. And our colleagues, me as well, will happy to answer the question about repositories, publishing agreements, copyright licenses, and what we spoke briefly today. And when we speak about publishing open access, we have to as well understand the intellectual property rights. Copyright is part of the intellectual property, and as an author, you automatically own copyright of your original work, which can be manuscript or data. One more small disclaimer that in most countries in our region, some details about law regulation can be different. So when you publish in international venue, you have to check your agreement. Does it suits you well and is the same as your institutional or founder policy. In context of open access, it's important to ask the question, what happened to those rights after you publish? Traditionally, authors transferred most of their copyrights to publishers through the publication agreements. Today, open access increasingly allows readers and not readers, researchers to retain more of their work. And on the slide, you can see term all right reserved. This is a very popular in paper version, traditional publishing. This represents traditional copyright protection, where others may not copy, distribute, or reuse the work without permission of the authors or institution. Another concept which we are familiar with from the national legislation is fair use or similar legal exceptions. This one allow limited educational or research use, and most of us are familiar with. So we can use of copyrighted materials, but we can't confuse it with open access. It doesn't give so much freedom for using them. And like you can see, thanks to open access, we get more precise information how we can use it, and the open access movement commonly relies on Creative Commons licenses, which, fun fact, first was introduced to the legal system in more than 25 years now. And these licenses enable authors to define exactly how others may reuse their work while still retaining their copyrights. So Creative Commons licenses provide a simple, internationally recognized right now framework for sharing research, very useful in the digital exchange of information. And many research founders recommend or even require the CC BY license because it allowed the widest possible dissemination with ensuring that the proper attribution of the authors. One of the CC license greatest advantages is that they are built like a simple set of building blocks. And if you will look at the table on this slide, you will notice that each license is more or less made up of a small number of repeating elements. And when you understand the symbols, the reading of the Creative Commons license will become very quickly and intuitive, even intuitive for the machine, which can read it as well, like AI. So you always start with CC, which tells you that it's Creative Commons license, and then simply you read the next abbreviation, which that CC is followed. And we always use BY, which stands for attribution, invented or written by who. This symbol appears in every CC license because it's obtained to give credit to the original creator, and it is always required. The next symbol is, for example, NC, which means non-commercial. So it indicates that others may use, reuse, and adapt the work only for non-commercial purposes. So, for example, your article can be sell to anybody else if they will be printed out again. Then we have ND, which stands for no derivations. This means that work may be copied, shared, but cannot be modified, translated, adapted, remixed. Another symbol is SA, which stands for share alike. If someone creates a modified work, they must distribute it under the same Creative Commons licenses as the original work was. Last but not least, we have CC BY NC and D, and this is the most restricted of the standards CC licenses. It allows others to download and share the work with attribution, but not modify it or use it in commercial way. These slides include as well the concept of public domain. I would like to just touch this shortly. Works in public domain are no longer protected by copyright. In most countries, this happened after 17 years passed from the date of author's death. Or the creator have deliberately waived those rights. For example, using CC0 dedication. Such works may be copied, shared, modified, reused without any permission. Most of the time, this type of license is license can be used for metadata in databases like repositories or digital libraries. And last but not least, I would like to add short information about responsible publishing. The rapid growth of open access has unfortunately also been accompanied by the appearance of so-called predatory journals. Those journals, publishers often prioritize collecting publication fees, so APCs, rather than provide proper editorial and peer review services. On these slides, you have couple of points how to avoid them, and because of I'm on very close of my time to presentation, I would just leave it here, but recommend you to use the Think, Check, Submit website, where you will find more resources and that can help you to avoid those predatory journals. And I guess it's important to remember that open access itself is not a problem, but and many high quality open access journals, they are already exist in our research domain, but it's very crucial to verify journals one by one. And last but not least, I would like to recommend you the recording from previous webinar series, Open for You, where our colleagues, Dr. Zuza Bielogórska and Dr. Georg Speisinger discussed in more details about predatory publishers and questionable journals. A link you can find on these slides. And thank you for your attention. And now I would like to hand over to Carolina and Laura.
Thank you, Carolina. Can you all hear me and see me? I hope yes. And I also hope that you can also see my screen. So today, my colleague Laura and me, okay, perfect. Thank you for the feedback. So today, my colleague Laura and me from the University of Milan, we will dig in a little bit deeper in the second section of the webinar, which is about the costs, the publication venues and trusted sources, both for publishing and both for funding open literature for your research and studies. So let's have a look at how the publication process works. You should all be PhD students, so I don't know if many of you or some of you have already published a paper. I hope for you and your career, yes, but anyhow, how does it work? You as researcher, we as researchers have the idea on how to base our work and what do we want to investigate and so on. We submit our idea for a project to a public entity. And hopefully we are granted a public funding, so based on public money. Then research is conducted mainly in public infrastructures, and at the end of the research process, you will have some research outputs. So basically, data, materials, papers, publication more broadly. And the final aim should be to disseminate to the wider public, to the academic community, your research output. So how does it work more specifically to disseminate your publication to the wider public? Because of course, for the publishing of data, the pathway is a little bit different But remember that data is as important as publication, but here now we are talking just about publication. So the researcher writes an article, writes a manuscript, he or she submits it to the chosen journal. So the editor-in-chief of the journal receives this manuscript, and he or she submits the manuscript to some peer reviewers. We will see in the next slide what peer review is, just for the purpose of this discussion. Just remember that peer review is the process that should review what you have written in your publication and assess its quality and also scientific integrity. So reviewers add some feedbacks, comments, modification to the manuscript which was submitted. And this review report is given back to the editor, who gives it back to the researcher in the first place, who has to make some implementation according to the review report sent by the reviewers and the editor. So there can be many different rounds of review. There can be major or minor reviews according to the comments and the modification and implementation that needs to be made to the manuscript. And finally, at the end of this entire process, the article, so your publication, is made available to the broader community. Whereas this process is completely dependent on you as regards your research, again, conducting in public infrastructures, research output, and so on. The dissemination part, so the publication part, does not depend on you researcher, but it depends mainly on the editor and on peer reviewers. So the part of this process which depends on you can take like a few months, let's say also half a year or something like that. While the final part, so the part in which finally your publication is disseminated towards the broader community, can last even up to a few years. And this can be a problem, of course, because yes, maybe you have published something in open access, but there may happen a lot of things between the time in which you wrote your article and then the article is published. And so it doesn't allow this long period of time, it doesn't allow a broader discussion within the broader academic community. So why is peer review so important? It is so important since it ensures the reliability and robustness of your research, because two or more experts of your field of research needs to assess the methodology that you have used, need to see your data if you have effectively used the right methodology tools, the validity of your data, the credibility of your findings. Also need to check the references that you have enlisted in your paper, and so they are going to contribute to the quality assurance and the scientific integrity of your own research. So peer review is so important because it can be performed by many different reviewers. As I said before, they should be subject expert, and they should give critical comments and feedbacks. Here you see this image, but they are depicted, so the peer reviewers are depicted with different images, of course, because they can be, more good reviewers, or they can also be very picky and so on. But this is, of course, how science can progress, because someone else within the research community is going to grant that the research that you have conducted is integral from a scientific point of view and robust. And eventually, at the end of the entire process, your paper is published, is made available to the wider public, and a conversation, a discussion can be created. There are different types of peer review. The most two common ones are the double-blind and the single-blind. They both have in common the fact that the identity of the identity of the reviewers is unknown, so it's completely anonymous. While in the double-blind peer review, also the identity of the author is unknown, it's concealed. Whereas in the single-blind peer review, the reviewers know who the author is. They both have downsides, meaning that, of course, being also the author, anonymous, this can grant a fairer review. This can grant a review which is less biased, and of course it can be and of course, from this kind of review, the minorities can benefit. So I'm thinking about early career researchers, so mainly PhD students, as you yourselves, women who may have some gaps within their career, also researchers and scholars coming from not elevated rankings countries, or also, minorities like queer researchers and so on. On the other hand, in both cases, by concealing the identity of reviewers, this means that reviewers do not take full responsibility for what they are writing in the review report. This means that if I don't have time to perform my review, maybe I can ask ChatGPT to do it for myself, or I can also include bad comments, not so fair comments, or comments which are not entirely focused on the focus of the paper or the topics which are published by the journal, and so on. So this means that, again, by not having their name on the peer review report, the reviewers do not take responsibility, and they can hide behind unfair behaviors. Also because, as you can see here, we won't dig into each of these section, but this means that of course, if performed properly, in the proper way, in a fair way, in a way which effectively has to assess the quality and the soundness of the research published in the paper, peer review is a long process. It takes a lot of time because reviewers are to read and critically examine the submitted paper many times. They had to read in depth each sentence, each comment, each note, look at the references, look at the data, look at the figures, and so on. And this is why, if performed in the proper way, it is really useful. But if not, there can be some distortion of the system. And this is also why the more time passes between the first version of the article and the published version of the article, many things can change. And this can be like a problem. And here is where I leave the floor to my colleague Laura for enlisting the different and many article versions that are out there. I don't know if Laura is here.
Yes, hello.
Perfect.
So to continue this discussion, the point is that because peer review is such a long process in many cases in the traditional version, then there are likely to be three main types of article versions. And these are the ones that you see in the slide. So mostly, if someone can please turn off their microphone. Thank you. No, okay. Amalia, if possible, to turn off the microphone. Thank you. Okay, so usually the version of the article which is submitted by the author to the journal in an initial phase, in its very first phase, is considered a preprint or a submitted manuscript. Later, as the article is under revision by the reviewers, this preprint version remains as it is. It is defined the preprint or submitted manuscript version up until the moment when the article is formally accepted by the journal. So when an author or a researcher receives the formal acceptance of their article as an article that could be published within the journal, then this article version becomes the author accepted manuscript, which later becomes the version of record version when the article is eventually published. Next slide, please. And here you can see, if you can click again, here you can see how the same article has different layouts and not just in formal formatting structures, but also will probably have different content. So you can see, of course, that on a preprint server, this article has been submitted, and that is the case of the bioarchive preprint server. On that server, the article has a preprint formatting and content. So some of the things might still be later changed in the final VOR version. Next slide. And of course, what we're trying to focus on here today is the importance of those micro and macro actions that you can take to disseminate your research in an open way. And acknowledging the importance of preprints is one of such actions, because preprints are really crucial, as they do reflect the research work and thoughts and efforts of a researcher, regardless of whether that article does or does not find a publication venue in a period of time. They still remain critical accounts of a specific topic or a discipline. That is why it is usually a good practice to anyway submit your article in a preprint server, because anyhow these articles contain important findings. Of course, they must be taken with caution because they might not have yet gone a specific review. So sometimes some of the data might have some contradictions or some arguments might be clumsy, but still depositing your preprint is important because it gives you different kinds of advantages. First of all, it makes a priority claim. It tells others around the world that you have been working on something immediately in the moment that you put it out there. You are suggesting to everyone that you've been working on something, and that there are no access barriers to understanding what you have been working on. Secondly, of course, it is also a way for citations to develop across time. People can cite preprints, that's not a problem. Of course, people who read the bibliographic reference of a preprint will know that this is a preprint because it will be written in a citation usually. And then, of course, as you improve your article, that is the stage when you are receiving feedback, not just in the peer review phase, but also essentially on preprint servers, because sometimes this can also be done where comments are deposited by other scholars on a specific preprint, or people can get in touch with you via email to give you some comments. Next slide, please. And so we have kind of already seen the pros. However, in some instances, there can be some disadvantages of using a preprint, as we have said. The major disadvantage is that sometimes journals do not accept pre-printed manuscripts because they have some tight or, as Carolina was mentioning, maybe some more long and opaque dynamics. So some journals will not accept the fact that people are depositing their preprints somewhere else. However, there is a way to find out if the journal that you're interested in does or does not accept your eventual preprint submission. And of course, there is always the risk that people who are not conscious about what a preprint is and how the review process functions, they might misunderstand and therefore think that maybe your work has already undergone review and that maybe there are no corrections or no new versions of that article. So they might cite you in a wrong way, in other words. Thank you. And this is just to show you that some preprint servers, such as, I don't know why Chem Archive is no longer there. It must have jumped away, but oh, there it is. We have different, there are different archives available. These are some in different disciplinary preprint servers. So Chem for chemistry, Bio for biology. Archive is more interdisciplinary, with also economics, engineers, and other disciplines being welcomed into the preprint servers. And now I leave again the word to Carolina.
Yes. Sorry, we decided to have just like a chat so that you can have, we can keep you more attentive to the webinar. So having understood the importance of preprints and the importance of peer review, how do these two these two interconnected practices can be put together? That can be put together by the fact that, as Laura was mentioning, preprints give immediate access to your research results. So even if peer review is so important, once again, to assess the quality, the robustness of your research, there can also be alternative ways to do it, and we will see in the next slides. And you can also use alternative ways to disseminate your articles before they're being published. And this is through preprints. So you can avoid that really long period of time between the writing of your article and its publishing. Also because, of course, peer review is not always perfect. Here you have, for instance, the screenshot, but this is also a link. You can see, you can click on it to an article stating that many different articles, different papers are being written by artificial intelligence. And also many different peer reviewers are using artificial intelligence to perform peer review. Because as we said before, peer review is time consuming. And of course, it's not rewarding since it's anonymous. No one will never connect the names of the reviewers to that specific article. So it's time consuming, it's not rewarding. And so many peer reviewers are also using AI to do peer review. And so we are in a situation in which AI writes papers and then AI reviews it. So it's really like unbelievable. And also here, I'm sorry, why it's not okay. Here also we have the words of Fiona Goodall, who was for like 20 years the first woman editor-in-chief of the British Medical Journal. And she, again, this is a link so you can effectively see the entire, or at least read the entire interview to her. Where she is expressing her preoccupation towards the peer review process because traditional peer review is not working anymore. The system has completely changed. The system is unbalanced, and so anonymity for peer reviewers, it's not working anymore. Also because there are some distortion in the system. And so here you have all the yes and whys to why to remove these kind of barriers in peer review. Then another kind of example of why peer review is not always perfect. Yes, it is true that anonymous peer review is a bit unbiased, but nonetheless, actually also anonymous peer review can be biased. Also because it is a process which usually tends to favor those kind of research which are less innovative because they are more familiar, more understandable by anyone else. And also it tends to favor, it's not always useful to compare good science from bad science. Also because in the vast majority of cases, data is not available. And this is why reviewers cannot effectively assess methodologies and data because data is not there. So what they are assessing on. And also here there is a big topic that we will not cover today. Of course, it's just a 2 hours webinar, there is also the topic of retraction. Of course, not all retractions are due to bad peer review, but in many different cases, like this one, for instance, the fact that data is not available can bring to a retraction of the entire paper. And of course, if the paper is retracted, this falls directly into the CV of the researcher, not of the reviewer. So this is why anonymous peer review means that no one is taking the responsibility for what is written in the paper, but the researchers who have written the paper. And so this is why there is this like dichotomy between the main goal of peer review, which is, again, assess the quality and robustness and soundness of a scientific product, a scientific paper, and also implement its quality and its integrity, and the fact that no one is taking responsibility for doing it. This is why I again leave the floor to Laura to why is the peer review open peer review so important.
Yes, so in the last minutes of our part of the presentation, we will cover this part. So having seen some of the disadvantages that can emerge from anonymity, what is the advantage of opening the identity of the reviewers? And what are the advantages of opening the peer review process as a whole from the beginning until the end? Well, according to different researchers, but also according to the European Commission, which is promoting open peer review, and therefore according to a rather trustworthy body in a research arena, actually open peer review promotes an open discussion and promotes more responsible decision making in scholarly publication. Why is that? Simply because of the fact that it makes transparency a prerequisite of the entire process. So if you can go to the next slide, please. If we take an example such as the Open Research Europe example, we can see how this essentially plays out in practice. Because the platform implements a transparent process where authors are encouraged to understand that when they are submitting an article, they're not necessarily engaging in a black box process, but they will be able to see the comments that their reviewers are making, but also their identities, and therefore possibly test, in a way, the expertise of the reviews that they are receiving. So in the Open Research Europe model, as you can see here, there are different phases which go from, of course, the traditional article submission phase, some publication checks where a team of professional actors in Open Research Europe just make sure that the submission is compliant to ethical guidelines and the functioning of the OR peer review process and of OR's principles. And then this is the part where the open peer review becomes much more evident. So data is uploaded and data statements are always required, plus, of course, the publication itself. The DOI is assigned to the article, so the OR open peer review process kind of engages all the article versions that we have seen. And then the reviewers are selected by the editors, of course, and when they publish their comments, these are openly visible, not just to the author, as I was saying, but also to anyone who finds these articles as those articles which have been deposited for publication in Open Research Europe. In all respects, Open Research Europe is now effectively a journal which is engaging in this open peer review practice. Can we go on the next slide, please? Here you can see a very direct example of this, where you can see the article here. In this case, also an open letter. There is a text which is submitted, and on the right-hand side, you can see the approval status. So you can see out of the 4 reviewers who have their names, the ORCID IDs, and therefore also their affiliation and their previous publications are public. Out of all of these reviewers, you can see who has responded and when, and who still has not responded as a reviewer. What you can also see from the box at the bottom left, bottom right, is that comments can be made. So the interesting thing about Open Research Europe and open review, peer review processes in general, is that not just the black box is opened, so making scientific publication process really open, but also that authors can, if they wish, publicly respond to peer review, and other people can comment on the paper and or on the comments made on the paper. So as you see, this is a much more engaging and public and collective process, which is visible to everyone, rather than remaining in a black box where authors sometimes feel like they are asked to change their articles, sometimes even in the creative dimension of their article, of their work, without really understanding where this comment is coming from, why is it coming, and how solid is this rationale. So now we turn to the crisis in open access, because what we have been saying so far by suggesting that open peer review could be a valid alternative, although of course it is not the only solution that should be implemented, is understanding why would there be a need for alternatives in the first place. And that is because if we look at the more material dimension of how open access publication works at a global level, we find that there is really many contradictions which need to be overcome. Otherwise, scientific integrity risks becoming something really, really weak and fragile. So, of course, next slide, please. Researchers face a lot of pressure to publish, as many of you might already know. There is a publish or perish culture. And of course, the open science movement has contributed to improving notions of what good science is and what not good science is. However, the problem is that editors and publishers have turned open access into a profitable business model. And what does this mean essentially? This means that, as Carolina was saying at the very beginning of our webinar, article processing charges are often demanded for publishing in open access. So essentially, rather than developing into a diamond open access model across the world, many journals have decided to actually buy into open access. So this means that authors are asked to pay if they want to turn their article into an open version. Next slide, please. Yes. So the fees for actually publishing in open access can be extremely high. They can really depend on different factors, but mostly the underlying factor is profit-oriented rationale and behavior on behalf of journals and their editors. Next slide, please. And we will not do this, I think, right now, but we want to show you in this link, which you will consult, you can see which kinds of activities cost more. What the underlying issue is, for example, let's just look at this example. If we make an educated guess about what costs more between an access to Wiley online library or 2 months at the sea off the south of France, well, unfortunately, we would find out that the access to the Wiley online library costs more than a 2-week vacation on an amazing sailing boat. This is just an example, really, to give you an idea about the fact that this is becoming a highly contradicting context, and therefore open access is not the cure of all evil, but is something to be approached with critical understanding. Here, we just want to illustrate the fact that costs have been increasing across time, as you can see in the estimated APCs table, and also the problematic element, which is that some editors, such as Elsevier, Taylor and Francis, make more profit margins than some established businesses in sectors which are drivers of the economy, such as the oil and gas business and sectors. What we are trying to say here is that even though institutions sometimes cover these costs, that does not make these costs justified, because these costs do not return to authors or to the public. They just become imbued into the profits and the single earnings of the people who appropriate, in many respects, the knowledge and the hard work of researchers and reviewers who spend a lot of time to work and make sure that scholarly publication could succeed. Next slide. To end with these critical and positive insights, we are just going to now provide you with some resources that can be helpful for you in your research, so that when you approach your research and your publication process, maybe you will turn to understanding in a more illuminated way how different pathways are available.
Yes, the first one of the tools that we wanted to present to you, rather than Open Policy Finder that we have already mentioned, is the directory of open access journals, .j. Here you can find the link, which is really, really useful, because basically, if you think, yes, we have just few minutes to look at it, because it's easier to see it than to explain it. It's just a directory, so here you can include each kind of word that comes to your mind. I don't know, epidemiology, for instance. And here you have, yes, I'm not a robot, but here you will have a list of all the journals related to these topics. And if you click on the journal, for instance, this one published by Nature in the United Kingdom, the directory gives you information about the APC for publishing a paper in that specific journal, when the journal began publishing in open access, the license used, the specificities about the retain of the copyrights and of the publishing rights, and also the amount of time from the submission to the publication. Also here you can see here we had some APCs, but for instance in this case for this journal published by the University of Louisville in the United States, we see no publication fees. This is due to the fact that if I go back to the first page, here I can refine my research results and I can click without fees. And by clicking on without fees, I will only have enlisted those journals which do not apply fees. So which basically are diamond open access journals. And you can see the vast majority of them are journals published by universities, by scientific societies, and institutions, institutes, and so on. And so this is really, really useful for you when you are going to decide where to publish your paper. So as Laura was saying, open access is not a cure-all. So we cannot, we as researchers, as and also as public institutions, cannot continue to pay any kind of cost just to publish open access. Yes, accessibility is the ultimate goal, but also the opening of a scientific debate is the ultimate goal. And the quicker this discussion is opened, the better it is. So we also have to use and support these kind of alternatives. So if you are able to find an open alternative which also has no APCs, no charges and no fees, why don't have a look and try to use it. And also the directory of open access journals is really significant, because in the frequently asked questions, there is the first one is this myth that all open access journals can be listed in the .j. This is not true, because it only enlists pure gold open access and diamond open access. So this means that no predatory journals, and also no hybrid journals, no journals which publish behind transformative agreements will be indexed in the directory of open access journals. And this is why it's so useful for you. And then other useful tools that you can use here, in this case, not to publish, but to find open alternatives. So let's suppose that this has happened to me a lot of times, and I think to all of you. I am Googling some keywords, or I'm trying to find the right results. I find the paper that that can be really useful to use within my own research. I click on it, and then I see that it is under paywall. These are alternatives on which you can find open and also trustworthy literature. So the first of these resources is institutional repositories. Here you have some links. We have one in the University of Milan, which is AIR, in the University of Warsaw, in the University of Geneva. There is also the AL platform, which is the one for all France as a country, but also has different sections for the different universities. And institutional repositories, what do they do? They simply have records, one record per each publication, so per each research output. The record, here we have all the links, so you can navigate through them. The records have the title, of course, and the basic metadata fields of the paper, of the publication. So the description, some keywords, the name of the journal, the ORCID ID of the authors, and so on. And in the vast majority of the cases, you are able to find a full text version of the article. So if you find the version of record behind paywall, you can try to find for instance, the preprint or the postprint, so the accepted manuscript in institutional repositories. The same thing.
Sorry.
Yes.
Sorry, Caro.
Yes.
Maybe we continue until the end and we shorten it quickly because
yes, it's just the last 2 slides.
Thank you.
The same thing for institutional repositories is for disciplinary repositories. These one are institutional, so you can find records for each of the institution. These one are disciplinary, so you will find records for your own specific discipline. Then you have university presses. These are examples coming from the 4U+ universities. The vast majority of them are community-driven and Diamond open access universities, university presses. And also you have bibliographic databases like OpenAlex or Core. One is managed by a nonprofit, the other one is managed in the UK. They have the full record and again the full text of each publication, so you are able to find open and trusted because it's verified literature. And lastly, we have Unpaywall, which is something that you can download on your own computer. And you will have these 2 different icons on the side of your web page. And whenever there is an open alternative to that specific paper, which is closed behind paywall, this open locket will pop out and give you the alternative. So again, maybe it will be the preprint and not the published version. But we have seen that preprint are basically the same common content of the published versions. And so now we will leave the floor to Mathilde for the last section dedicated to alternative models for publishing and for performing the entire process that we have been discussing. Thank you.
So thank you, Karina and Laura. In this part 3 of the webinar, I will be focusing on what I think is one of the most exciting shifts currently happening in scholarly publishing, which is the publish, review, curate model, an emerging alternative to the traditional publishing process. Next slide. So what exactly is the publish, review, curate model, or PRC model, as I call it through the presentation? In short, it's an alternative to traditional scholarly publishing, in which 3 key processes, dissemination, peer review, and scientific validations, are separated and handled through open, decentralized infrastructures. So instead of happening in a fixed sequential closed process controlled by a single journal, these 3 steps can now happen independently by different actors at different moments. One important clarification, the PRC model is a publishing model. It describes how content flows from author to reader is. So it is not a business model. Diamond Open Access, for instance, is a business model. The two can work very well together, but they are not the same thing. This model, the PRC, came into practice in the early 2000s, but it is now growing much more rapidly. And in the next few slides, you will understand why. Next, please. So let's work through these 3 steps of the PRC model. The first step is publish. In this model, the work, the paper, becomes publicly available immediately as soon as the authors decide to share it. The primary goal at this stage is dissemination, so getting the research out into the world as quickly as possible. Concretely, this usually means depositing the manuscript on a preprint server, such as Archive, bioRxiv, or Zenodo, or in an institutional open access repository. At this point, the paper exists in the scientific record before any formal validation has taken place. This might feel uncomfortable at first, like how can we share research before it's even been reviewed, right? But the key insight of the PRC model is that publication and validation don't need to happen at the same time. They can, and perhaps they should, be separated. Next slide, please. The second step is review, and this is where the PRC model really differs from what we're used to. In the traditional model, as we saw, peer review happens before publication, so it's a gatekeeper for the journal. In the PRC model, review happens after the work is already public. Importantly, the reviews here are open, so the content of the reviews is made publicly available and the identity of the reviewers is visible. This is a significant departure from the anonymous closed reviewing process most of us are familiar with. So what happens in practice is that reviewers transparently evaluate the research and provide feedback, which is then published alongside the preprint. We can have multiple rounds of review and revision that can take place, and each new version of the paper, version 1, 2, 3, is tracked and can be cited independently. The versioning system is a real advantage, as that readers can see exactly how a paper evolved in response to feedback, which adds a layer of transparency that simply doesn't exist in traditional publishing. Next slide. So let's talk now about peer review platforms, where this review actually happen on what we called peer review platforms that are digital infrastructures, specifically designed to manage the evaluation of scientific manuscripts by qualified peers. They handle the submission, the assignment, the tracking of the reviews independently of any particular journal. There are quite a few of these platforms now. Here I've listed some examples on the slide. If you want to explore what platform exists in your field, a good starting point is to search on Society or EMBO or Europe PMC, which aggregate reviews from many different communities in different fields. Next slide, please. Now to show you an example, I will focus on the platform called Review Commons. So it's a platform affiliated with EMBO, the European Molecular Biology Organization, and it's particularly well established in life sciences. Their recommended workflow is this. The authors are first encouraged to post their manuscripts manuscript as a preprint on a server like bioRxiv. Then the manuscript goes through Review Commons, so the platform for evaluations. The platform can select reviewers, organize all the workflow. And the Review Commons can recommend the paper to some affiliated journals or other journals, depending on the topic and the quality and the seriousness of the research. Now there's a growing network of journals that accept this review directly. So that means that authors don't need to start the review process from scratch each time. And even some of those journals can accept the paper as is, which means after all the peer reviews via the review platform, the journal sometimes can accept the new version like that. Also, some platform like Peer Community In can propose the whole process until the submission and the publication in the journal, because PCI has the PCL journal. So they have their own network of affiliated journals listed on their website and their own journal. So this is a great illustration of how the PRC model can enable portability of peer review, meaning that the reviews travel with the manuscript rather than being locked inside one journal system. Next, please. And the third and final step is Curate. So once a work has been published and reviewed, like possibly reviewed many times by several people, it can be curating. This curation can take many different forms. It might be compiling content by topic. For example, several papers in biology are put in the same journal publication for 1 month, which is thematically, I don't know. It might also be providing an editorial endorsement. So the editorial board says, yes, this paper is good. We validate the work. They can also apply a recommendation badge or an open badge for the quality of the work, or to attest that the process was following the open science recommendations. But the journal can also make some judgments, either qualitative or quantitative, about the quality and relevance of the work. They can also add some metadata or advice to, I don't know, add some figures or graphs. So curation can be done by a journal or by a community of peers, or even by the review platform itself, if it's one part of the process. So one of the most interesting features of PRC curation is that it is decoupled from publication. That means the same preprint can receive multiple independent curation decisions from different journals, different communities, different platforms. A paper might be recommended by Peer Community In and also endorsed by a journal at the same time, for example. This openness and multiplicity is very different from the inner inner journal, the winner takes it all dynamic of traditional journal publishing. Next slide, please. So what are the advantages of the PRC model? Quickly, first, it's speed. The results are disseminated immediately without waiting months or years, sometimes for the traditional review and publication process. Second, there are lower costs. the PRC model tends to require more modest technical investment than traditional publishing infrastructure. Also, transparency, the review process is open and visible. This increases trust and accountability. Also, for society, it's a better visibility on research works and research ecosystems and quality of science and everything. Flexibility and interoperability, PCR is designed to work across different preprint servers, repositories, and journals. It's not locked into one single system. Openness, because the reviews are not anonymous, more people can participate in the evaluation process. Not just one, like 2 or 3 reviewers. And also, and maybe the most important, the PCR model shifts the publishing decision from editors to authors. So in this model, the author decides when and where they share their work. The validation comes afterwards from the community and not from a single editorial gatekeeper. Next slide, please. Of course, there are limitations and criticism because no model is perfect. So the most common concern about PRC is the risk of spreading invalidated information because the research is public quite early before it's even reviewed. So there's a risk that preliminary data or maybe even flawed results get picked up and misused. Whether it be by the media, by policymakers, other researchers, the general public, etc. Also related to this, there are quality concerns with content that hasn't been filtered or curated. The model also places more responsibility and work on authors because they need to manage the subscription to preprint servers, then engage with reviewers, update their manuscripts, navigate multiple platforms, maybe answer and discuss back and forth with peers. So that's more work than simply submitting to a journal and waiting for the editors to make a decision. It also requires coordination between repositories, review platforms, curation communities, and journals, which adds organizational complexity. And we are only currently at the first steps of this system, this model. So the coordination and interoperability and fluidity between all these actors are not yet perfect. And finally, there's still a lack, unfortunately, of academic recognition in many institutions. For hiring committees, for example, or for grant applications, a preprint reviewed via PRC is often not considered equivalent to a publication in a traditional peer-reviewed journal. This is changing, but still slowly. Next slide, please. So what are the best practices for publishing under the PRC model if it's something you would consider for your doctoral work? Whether you are depositing a paper, a dataset, or another type of research object, there are a few principles that will make your work more discoverable and more reusable. So first of all, your work should always have a persistent and unique identifier. For example, a DOI or an ARC identifier, for example. It should be discoverable both by humans browsing the web and by machines indexing repositories. It should be freely accessible and ideally carry an open license, CC BY, for example. It should also be well annotated with interoperable metadata, which make it easier for others to find and reuse your work. One practical tip that is quite important, we recommend to avoid publishing only on a personal website or blog because these lack many of the features I mentioned. Most of the time they don't give persistent identifiers. The metadata registration is not as well not as good and well organized as in dedicated repositories and platforms. And also there are problems with long-term observations, and your work risk becoming invisible over time. Next slide, please. So to wrap up this part, I want to come back to the key points. First of all, the publish, review, curate model inverts the traditional publishing sequence by decoupling dissemination from validation. It allows research to circulate faster, and it makes the review process more transparent and more open. Also, different platforms exist that implement this model in different ways. But each with varying degrees of openness, portability, and system of curation. And that diversity is actually one of the model's strengths, but also adds some complexity. Also, I wanted to raise some open questions and tensions that can be linked to this model. For example, how do you think academic institution will adapt and how funders will adapt their evaluation criteria that is currently built around journal prestige to recognize PRC-based publications and other emerging models? Will researchers, students, and the general public develop the literacy needed to navigate content that is partially evaluated or not at all yet evaluated? And could competing curation layers, meaning different communities labeling the same preprint differently, for example, one community saying, yes, this paper is great, the other one saying, no, I think this result contradicts the work of this researcher or this lab or this community. So will these different curation layers create new forms of fragmentation in scientific consensus rather than solving the problems of the old system, which would be not that great? So these are questions the community, the research community is working on, and I think they are worth keeping in mind as the model continues to evolve. Next slide, please. Finally, a brief look at where all this might be heading. One trend that seems to be emerging, at least in some fields like the life sciences, especially because in life sciences, they already have bioRxiv and eLife that are well known and implanted. So in some fields like life sciences, the trend maybe is that there will be a convergence toward preprint plus portable peer review as the default mode of publishing. So the idea is simple. You post your preprint, it gets reviewed once, and those reviews travel with the manuscript as you submit to different journals. So this reduces redundancy and speed up the process for everyone. Also, maybe independent curation communities like peer community that are growing, they can offer a lightweight, low-cost alternative to journal-based gatekeeping. It's particularly interesting for disciplines where publishing budgets are tight. And of course, there is growing interest in the potential of AI-assisted curation and review tools, which could help scale the evaluation process beyond what human reviewers alone can manage. This is still early stage, and as you may guess, it may be controversial, but I think it's worth keeping in mind and follow this trend. And finally, I'll leave you with this thought, which I think captures the essence of what the PRC model is really about. Is the question is no longer just what gets published, but who decides what's worth trusting and when it's worth trusting. So I thank you very much for your attention, and we are happy to take any question.